In this demo, I'm going to cover one way that I use Kahana in order to collect, organize, and create new content. So part of this video will involve me switching between Kahana and Twitter. And what I'm doing in this use case is essentially collecting blog posts from my Twitter feed and saving them into Kahana for me to read later, and then generate comments and feedback for these bloggers. So a little bit of background, each of the blogs that I'm looking at here is a blogger that reached out to me on Twitter, sharing their blog for me to review. And something I really like to do is just get to know new bloggers who are up and coming and see what they like to blog about. So on this screen now, I'm looking at Sarah Nderi, who is a blogger from Africa. And one of the reasons why her blog is particularly appealing to me is that she's blogging a lot about productivity. So right now, while I'm in reading mode, I'm just looking through her blog and saving some of these posts for later when I can take more of an in-depth look at it in Kahana itself. So what I'm doing right now is seeing whether or not there's another blog post that I want to look at on her blog. And as you can see, this one is pretty intriguing to me. Mindless task to do when I don't feel like writing, which is very, very common for many writers, including myself. So I didn't read this post when I saved it in because I actually prefer to do most of my reading in Kahana itself, utilizing the Zen mode and split screen view. A lot of the writing or the reading that I do is accompanied by simultaneous writing, and that's just how I prefer to use Kahana. But one of the things I wanted to really stress in this video is that there's a plenty of ways that you can figure out how to use Kahana to streamline things that you do on a daily basis. This just happens to be one of the things that I like to do and be engaged on Twitter and learn more about up-and-coming bloggers. So here's another blog that was posted on my Twitter, and as you can see, the UX for this blog is a little bit worse, and there's a hovering infographic, so I'm not really liking this blog too much. This is probably not something I'm ultimately going to recommend to my followers on Twitter, but this is just part of my process. Sometimes I end up on pages that are kind of lower quality compared to the other blogs that I find. I'm really interested in finding killer content that is high quality and delivers value to my followers. Even then, I'm still saving this blog post within Kahana because it actually does provide some value for me to deliver to my followers in the sense that I can actually tell them what not to do when creating a blog here, which would be structuring it with a poor UX and making it seem like, not everything is organized and appealing to the reader. So now that I've accumulated a couple of blogs into Kahana, you can see I'm moving through the sandbox, searching for that page that I saved. So here I'm just seeing that it exists, and then I'm basically trying to move it into my Twitter blogs workspace. So I'm just taking a look that this one's here as well. Sometimes I like to check in the sandbox and just make sure that the files that I put in are there before I actually move into the workspace itself. So here we go. I'm basically adding it into my Twitter blogs workspace, and now that I feel comfortable to begin working, I'll be going into my workspace and starting to pull together some comments on all of the different blog posts that I looked at today. So here I'm just refreshing the app, making sure that everything is auto-saved, and now I'm going into the workspace. So beginning with Laura's blogs, I'm taking a look at a nutrition blog. Nutrition is something that I'm pretty passionate about. I'm always looking for new tips to help make my diet more effective. And I'm also taking a look at productivity. These are topics that I like to read about in tandem because I think that it allows me to really see the connections between those ideas. So here I'm just titling my note in order to remember the blogger that I'm looking at. So in this case, it's Scholar IU, and I'm just taking a note about, I'm basically organizing the note based on date. So I remember this was the date that I looked at the blog post, and this is the blogger that I'm reviewing. The idea is that I'll be able to come back to her on Twitter and give her some feedback with what I thought about the blog. So, leading into this, I'm about to write some comments just giving my general opinion about what I'm seeing from her content. So now we're digging in. I take time to read through each of the headlines and assess her strategy for articulating her message. So one of the things that jumps out to me at the very beginning is I really like the conciseness and the general positive tone that she's writing with. I noticed that this is more of a reflective, personalized blog post, not necessarily content that delivers a ton of value with respect to instructions or comparisons or advice. It's more just kind of a rumination, which is something that I really enjoy. I like all types of writing, whether or not it delivers concrete value to help me be a better strategist or business blogger. But I definitely think that being able to weave this type of voice into your content can be a huge plus. So this is what I'm essentially articulating in my comments, and what this is going to help me remember how to help Scholara when I basically reach back out on Twitter. So those are some of my notes based on her post. Now I'm turning my attention to another post that I captured, which is about nutrition tips from Laura's blog. And this is actually a blog post that was written by a guest writer. So I'm just going to make a note of that. And then I'm going to be reading through the content and seeing what aspects of the blog I like, if there's any advice that I think is particularly useful to my followers on Twitter, or to anyone for that matter. One of the best things about Kahana is that once you import the blog or any piece of content, it'll always be available for you in the future. And this really helps me with my job as a content marketer, because now I have a repository of useful blogs that I can give to people whenever they're looking for good content to be shared. So I really see Kahana and using it in this way as an investment into your ability to be efficient in the future. So here I'm basically importing, I'm copy and pasting text directly from the post. And this is something I like to do, especially when a quote really resonates with me. So this is some really good advice about how, you need to avoid food labels that are about light and slim products. Those are kind of, they kind of trick you into thinking that they're more nutritious and healthy than they actually are. And what I'm doing is I'm creating a smart link between that text and the post itself. So essentially, if I'm ever looking at this note again, I can easily click that blue link and pull up this exact page for reference. Now, this is a pain point that a lot of people have talked about, and it's something that a lot of students come into contact with because they're constantly organizing a lot of different resources and basically need to keep track of all the references, especially when you're writing some type of academic paper. So I'm using that functionality for a different reason in blogging, but that's just an example of how Kahana functionality translates to different types of activities. And one of the things we're most excited for during Alpha is to see the different ways that users creatively leverage the functions within Kahana to accomplish different types of processes that we haven't necessarily identified yet. So as you can see, I'm poring over each section of her blog, and I'm actually really enjoying this blog. And I think a lot of the content in it is interesting. So here's an example of a sentence that I like, where she's explaining alternatives to using salt in your recipes. And some of those tips involve using turmeric or different types of herbs and vinegars. And this is something that definitely makes sense and is a great way to incorporate multiple spices into your recipes and your food while lowering the amount of sodium in your diet. Here's another piece of content that I like, involving how to make decisions around what fats you include in your diet and which types of fats are healthy and which fats are not healthy. So there's a couple of examples of healthy fats. I don't really consider this advice to be that detailed. I've seen this advice before in podcasts and blogs that I've come across, but I still like the examples that are provided here with respect to getting started, including healthy fats in your diet. So I'm just organizing them in bullets for my own sake. This is just the format that I like to use, but it totally depends on what I'm trying to accomplish within Kahana. Sometimes I'm more organized with my notes and sometimes I'm less. So here you see I clicked into a link within Kahana's workspace, and this is a functionality that is really interesting and allows you to actually browse through the internet within a workspace. So I'm still exploring ways that this is useful, but I'm really optimistic about it. And I hope that this demo gives you a good understanding of how Kahana is an end-to-end tool that allows you to do a lot of diverse different types of activities, more than just completing an assignment or taking notes. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope you have a productive session with Kahana and come across a new way to use it that really helps you become more efficient with what you're trying to do on a daily basis. So thank you.